Okay, so we're on question 33. And by now we should be pretty good at recognizing linear pairs that are supplementary and which ones go well together. If you look at question number 33, you'll probably notice that these two are supplementary angles and they have the same variable, and that these two are supplementary angles and they have the same variable. So it's a lot easier just to solve for those that way. So that's what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add these two angles together first. I'm going to solve for y and set it equal to 180 because they're supplementary. So I'm going to combine like terms. 9y plus 11y is 20y, and negative 187 plus negative 253 is negative 440 equal to 180. Add 440 to both sides. The 20y comes down. Add these two together, I get 620. And when I solve for y is equal to 31. Again, notice that all I have is y. I don't have the actual measure of these angles. If I wanted to find them, I would have to take 31 and plug them in there. Next, I'm going to solve for x. So if you look here, these are supplementary angles, and I set that up here. I added them together, combining like terms. So let's take a look here. 7x plus x is 8x. Negative 248 plus positive 44 is negative 204. Remember that when you're adding and the signs are different, really what you're going to end up doing is subtracting and keeping the sign of the bigger number. 248 is a bigger absolute value than 44. So since they're different signs, positive and negative, I'm going to subtract and I'm going to keep the sign of the bigger number, which is 248. So it's 8x minus 204. And that's equal to 180. Now I'm going to add 204 to both sides. So my 8x comes down. 180 plus 204 is 384. Divide both sides by 8. And x is equal to 48. Okay? So again, remember, all I've found so far are the values of x and y. I haven't actually found the measure of these angles, right? If I wanted to find out how big these angles are, I would have to plug in the x into this equation here, and I have to plug in the y into these equations there, which is what you're going to need to do for question number 34. Let's take a look at question number 34. 34, I have some vertical angles here. Okay, I have some vertical angles. Let me get this out of the way very briefly. And if you notice for 34, yes, these are a linear pair, but this has an x and this has a y. They don't have like terms. If you look over here, these two, yes, these are a linear pair. They're supplementary, but again, they do not have, this has a y, this is x. They don't have like terms. But I do know that these angles across from each other are vertical angles, which means that they are congruent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set them equal to each other. Because they are congruent, I can say that 3x plus 20 is equal to 5x minus 50. After here, guys, is just a basic algebraic problem where we're solving for x. You've done this in Algebra 1 before, so I'm just decided to get rid of the 5, so I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. That's going to give me negative 2x. The 20 comes down, and the negative 50 comes down. Now I'm going to solve for x, so I'll subtract 20 from both sides, so my negative 2x comes down. Negative 50 and negative 20 is negative 70. Divide both sides by negative 2. Remember that a negative divided by a negative is a positive, so negative 70 divided by negative 2 is positive 35. Well, now that I know that x is 35, well, now I can actually figure out what these angles are, yes? Well, I did that here. All I have to do is take the 35 and plug it into the equations. So here's my first equation, 3x plus 20. I plugged in the 35, 3 times 35 plus 20. Well, 3 times 35 is 105. 105 plus 20 is 125. So this angle here is actually 125 degrees, and that's why I had that there before. If I look at the second one here where it's 5x minus 50, well, when I plug in the 35 for the value of x, well, 5 times 35 is 175. And 175 minus 50 is 125. Look at that again. This one's also 125 degrees. And I shouldn't be surprised because what? These are vertical angles. And I already know that vertical angles are what? Are congruent. Now, if we look here, the value of y is pretty straightforward to figure out. These are a linear pair. These are supplementary angles. They add up to 180. Well, if this is already 125, I just need a couple of more degrees to get me to the 180 for the y, right? Well, 180 minus 125 is equal to 55. So the value of y is 55. And again, it doesn't matter which angle I use because these are supplementary angles, and so are these. These are also supplementary angles. They're also going to add up to 180. So that's why it's very important that you know the measure of these actual angles. And that's question number 34. Let's move on to question number 35. Question number 35, we have here, again, a set of angles. By the way, that's not a negative sign there. It's not on your paper. That's just a little dash mark from the copy machine. So again, what do I know here? Well, I know these are supplementary, but they don't have the like terms. I know these are supplementary, but they don't have like terms either. But I do know that these angles here are vertical angles, and that vertical angles are congruent. Well, that's what I did here. I set them equal to each other because they are congruent. And after that, I just use basic algebra to solve for x. So minus 4x from both sides. So 6x minus 4x is 2x. These cancels out, and the 16 comes down. I divide both sides by 2, and x comes out to be 8. Okay? Well, the fact that x is 8 doesn't really help me find this angle by itself. It'd be a good idea if I knew what these angles were. So I can use that using that 8. Because all I have to do is plug in 8 into the angles, and I'll know what they are. And that's what I did here. So if you look up here, right, my first angle is 6x. Well, 6 times x, 6 times 8 is 48, which means that this angle here is 48. And if you look over here, this other angle is 4x plus 16. Well, 4x plus 16, I plug in the 8. 4 times 8 is 32, plus 16 is 48. Look at that. So this is also 48. And again, it would make sense that they're both the same because these are vertical angles. So if this is 48 degrees, then this also has to be 48 degrees. Well, now that I know that these two are 48 degrees, finding this angle right here is pretty easy because I know that these two angles are supplementary. They add up to 180. So basically, all I have to do then is 180 minus 48, which is going to give me 132. So again, this is 48 degrees, this is 48 degrees, so I know that these have to add up to 180, and these have to add up to 180. So this has to be 132 degrees. So I can say that 11y is equal to 132. Divide both sides by 11, and y comes out to be 12. Okay? I definitely recommend that you look at this question again, and that you look at the explanation of this question again on the YouTube video. Finally, we're moving on to question number 36. Question number 36, we have here a lot more information. Well, what do I know for certain here? I know that 56 and 7x are vertical angles. I know that they are congruent. And if they're congruent, well, then I know that they're equal to each other. So I'm going to set them equal to each other right here. So 7x is equal to 56. Divide both sides by 7, x is equal to 8. So I can just, by the way, put 56 degrees here, by the way. Right? Well, now that I know that x is 8, well, if x is 8, can I figure out this angle right here? Sure, because this angle here is 2 times x, which would be what? Which would be 2 times 8. And 2 times 8 is 16. So I know that this angle here is 16 degrees. Well, then this entire big angle here, they're adjacent angles. And if I add them together, 56 plus 16 is going to give me 72 degrees, which means that I know that this angle here, this whole big angle, is 72 degrees. Why is that important? Because now now that I found x, 8, I'm looking for y. So it's important for me to know the size of these angles, because if I know the size of these angles, then I can figure out the value of y. Well, 56 plus 16 is 72. So this whole angle here is 72 degrees. Well, aren't these angles here supplementary? This big angle here and then this whole angle of y here, don't they add up to 180? Yes, they do. So if this whole angle here is 72 degrees because of the 56 plus 16, well, then I can find the y here, just saying 100 minus 72. This whole angle is 72. So 180 minus 72 is 108, which means that this whole angle here is 108 degrees. And that's question number 36. So again, I know that I know that these are vertical angles. I found x. X is 8. And 7 times 8, of course, is 56. I know these are equal. Again, they tell me this little angle squeezed in here is 2 times 8, which is 16. These are adjacent angles, so I can add these two angles together. So 56 plus 16 means that this whole big angle here is 72 72. We can even call this angle 9x if we add them both together. So this is 72. And if this whole angle is 72, well then this angle